Alcohol markers are great. You can really achieve beautiful things with it, with different styles, portraits, scribbles, urban sketching, portraits again, landscapes, whatever you want to do with it. I love alcohol markers. But there is a downside to alcohol markers. It's the bleeding through. No matter the paper you're using, it will bleed through. And even with very expensive papers, very cheap one, this is the same story. You will have a reverse image on the back of your paper. I know some people don't mind, but this really makes me cringe. So if you're like me, I may have the solution for you. One way is to hide the back of the paper with something else. It can be an acrylic paint because it is opaque and it's easy to cover. I have tried with gesso as well, but really it's not opaque enough, or you would need 3 or 4 layers. In this sketchbook, which is about urban sketching, I wanted to draw paint on both sides of the paper. So I have prepared washes of acrylic paint in some pages, and then I can draw on top of it with something else. So it makes a kind of opaque layer, even if it's not that opaque. This dark spot here is still bleeding through. And also I've tried with gouache. It works also as well, but still not very opaque. The easiest is to glue something. So this is why I have a collage page before the alcohol markers, and then I have an acrylic painting on the other side. So it's really covering the bleeding. But there is more to it. I've seen a TikTok with this sketchbook, which is crescent render, I guess, no show-through paper. It's supposed to not bleed, and the pages lay flat. So I bought one. This is an A4 size, so pretty large, and it comes, it's made in the USA, so I guess you can find it anywhere in the world because I can't find it in France. I want to test it with my new Ohuhu markers and make a portrait, of course. So, the cover is very, very soft. This is really like a baby skin. Love that. It's a soft cover, and the paper is really, really white. You can tell the difference with my dirty table. It's very, very white, and it's very heavy as well. It is supposed to be 180 GSM. Let's make a drawing and see how it goes. It looks kind of weird. Let's say we will have to trust the process. So this paper is pretty different from, let's say, a regular drawing paper, because the ink is kind of sitting on top, pretty hard to blend. If it is saturated enough with ink, with alcohol, you can blend easier. Soak everything to blend. I'm really soaking a lot. If you used a regular paper to do that, you would get a lot of bleeding on the other side. But this is still not bleeding. So I guess it won't anymore. But there is not only alcohol markers in my life, my artistic life, and I want to try this paper with different mediums. So these are acrylic inks, which are pretty opaque, and on purpose I'm using a dark green in the background. And I had some recent bad experience with dip pen and ink in a regular sketchbook. I was pressing a bit too hard with my nib and it bled through the paper. So I want to make another drawing with a dip pen and an opaque ink. The one that is absolutely waterproof. So usually they are highly pigmented. And also I want to add another medium on top of it. And these are fluo markers, the one you have in your office, because why not? I'm trying to bleed through the paper with something, but still not this medium. So let's go with watercolor. I know it's not watercolor paper, but sometimes when you make experiments, you will discover new and interesting things. So the first thing is the water and sitting on top of the paper. And of course, because the paper is not absorbing any humidity, alcohol, water, or whatever it is you're using on top of it. Well, now it's dry and it has dried, leaving an outline on the shapes. So it's obviously not a watercolor paper, so I was not expecting it to behave properly with watercolor. But this is fun because the colors have really faded. And I don't know where is the pigment because it's not on the other side as well. So this paper is really something weird. Let's try to add a second layer. And good point, you can add a second layer and you can add more depth to your color because it has faded a lot in the first layer, but in the second layer, that's pretty cool because you can get intense colors. And still, you will have your outlines around the shapes. And one last medium I wanted to try is the Sharpie marker, because this marker is really bleeding through every paper you are using, and I've been caught once or twice, so now I am expecting a lot from this paper. Even if now that I have tried a lot of different mediums, I'm pretty sure it won't bleed. So what do I think of this specific sketchbook? And the promise was no bleed through, no show through, and yes, I have added more alcohol markers on one side and on the other side with a dark background, and nothing is showing through. Really, it's surprisingly not bleeding. I must say I'm amazed. I've tried acrylic markers as well and they don't show through. Acrylic inks, same. A lot of acrylic ink again, and also an opaque ink, nothing. Watercolor, so watercolor is giving a bit of warping to the paper because I've added a ton of water and I kind of like the blooming effect I have. So it's not to make specific watercolor effects, but it can be interesting. And Sharpie, the last one. Still nothing. Amazing. I love that. Just a disclaimer, I have bought this sketchbook with my own money. It's not sponsored by any means, and I've tried this brand, but any other brand that is promising a no-through paper, I know that Ohuhu is making one as well. I think it's the same story. You can use it safely with alcohol markers or any other medium and it won't bleed. Hooray! Hallelujah! I'm so happy. But now I have a hard time to fill this one because it's 64 pages, both sides, so that's 128 pages to fill, A4 size, pretty big, so talk to me in 3 or 4 years about this one. If you like this video, don't forget to like it because the algorithm needs like to live.